Hi everybody. So today we're going to be doing a jack pine painting. As you can see, this is actually a picture that I took when I was in Keelbear Provincial Park about a year ago with my daughter. We went hiking in the fall, and this was one of the amazing trees that we saw there. So the first thing we're going to do today, you should have all your equipment set up. You should have your paintbrushes all ready to go. You should have some paints. You should also have a palette, which I know I didn't put on the list, but I'm assuming that you have something that you can mix your paints in. And I've also got a pencil here that I'm going to be using, and that's to sketch out our artwork. So the first thing you want to do is find your horizon line in your image. So in this particular image, the horizon line is about a little bit less than 1/3 down on your picture, which is great because that's actually a perfect place to put your horizon line. You can, because you're the artist, you can put your horizon line anywhere that you want. But in this one, I'm actually going to keep it right where it is. So I'm going to prop up my canvas a little bit, and I'm just going to take my pencil and draw the line across for my horizon line. And it doesn't matter how dark it is, the paint's going to cover it up, but make sure you're able to see it. You don't want it too light. I'm also going to put in the little mountains that are in the far background. And then here in the foreground, I'm going to put where I want the grass to go. And then I'm going to put, now in this picture here, there's a whole bunch of little rocks, but I'm actually thinking I'd like to see a nice big rock in mine. I've done this one before, and I'm going to try something different. I'm going to put a big rock in. And then, of course, the next most important part is to put your tree in. So the tree, I'm going to start at one point and have it bend across. And actually, I'm going to put it right off the page. And then here, take the trunk on the other side, around. It gets thinner as you go up to the top and across. And now, as you can see, the branches are pretty much all over the place. You can put in as few or as many as the branches as you see. You can change the position of where they are. You're the artist, so I mean, this is what we call a reference photo. Doesn't mean you have to do exactly what you see here. It's an interpretation of this photo that you have. So I'm going to put this one coming in front. I'm going to put one across here. These ones here, they kind of start to go up a little bit. Here we've got a few little sketchy ones. And then up here. And then a couple there. And then across the other side, put a branch here. And coming down there. Coming across here. Okay. So that's basically all you need to start. So now the next steps, I'm going to put this actually right in front here. It's always nice to have your reference photo close by. The next step is grab a brush, and we're going to work on the sky first. And as you can see from your reference photo, the sky tends to be lighter at the horizon line and darker as it goes up. Now, it's not a hard and fast rule because sometimes skies change, and sometimes you'll find things are darker one way and lighter another way. When you're trying to decide which brush to choose, pick a brush that matches the space that you're going to fill. So in this case, I'm filling a pretty large space. Okay, so what I'm going to do actually, before I even do that, I'm going to put the tree trunk in. I'm going to use this guy here. Just because we're doing sort of a wet on wet technique, which means the paint is always going to be wet. Of course, unless you're using acrylic. Those of you using acrylic, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're using oil, your paint is going to stay wet for probably about 2 weeks. That's how long the paint, oil paint is usually wet on a fresh painting. So I'm just going to put in the trunk across here. And I'm not going to do it super, super dark or anything like that. I'm just going to put it in very roughly. The back side is lighter because it's in darkness. And the front side to the right is lighter because it is where the sun is shining. Now again, you're the artist, so if you want the sun coming from the other direction from what is shown in your reference photo, you can certainly change it. Okay, so there we go. So I've got the basics of the tree trunk in, so now I'm going to switch over. And I'm going to start my sky. And I'm going to start with the white down at the horizon line, down here. And we'll go across right at the base with the lightest color. The other reason why the sky tends to be lighter at the horizon line is it's the furthest in the distance. And things further away tend to be lighter. They tend to be more blurry with less detail and smaller also. So if you were painting a line of trees, the one closest to you obviously would be bigger, and as the trees get further away, they get smaller in the distance. And that's a way to show depth in your artwork when you're creating a piece. Now my paint is a little bit dry because I was using it earlier. So I'm going to add some of my walnut oil medium in, and I know on my list I have that on there for you. If you prefer a thinner paint, you can certainly get the walnut oil or the linseed oil for your oil paint and thin it out. It all depends on what your preference is. And for me too, it depends on what I'm painting. For skies, I tend to like it less chunky. And if I'm doing things closer with foliage, whatnot, then I'll paint it darker. So I'm going to start adding a little bit of blue in now to my sky. And when I paint, I'm not your usual artist. I don't, as you can see on here, nothing is pure color except the color that came out of the tube. Because I believe that there are no pure colors in nature. There are shades that are made in nature. And so when I'm using my brush to paint, my brush tends to have a bunch of different shades and colors on it. Because for me, it makes it a little bit more natural looking. Again, of course, if you prefer the solid color, you can certainly go right ahead and do the solid colors. I do not have a problem with that. So now the other trick I have, because I'm already got a light color on my brush, I'm just going to rough in some of the wispy clouds that are coming across here. You can certainly use more than one brush for your sky. I like to use the same brush for a fair bit of my work when I can, mostly because I'm not super cool on washing my brushes. If I ever had an apprentice, certainly the apprentice job for me would be to wash brushes. It's not my favorite thing. Okay, I kind of like that wispy cloud there, so I'm not going to do too much more. The nice thing about not being too exact when you're painting is that happy accidents happen. And if you see something that you think is really cool, then just leave it and then continue on with the rest of your work, because sometimes when you overwork things, then you lose what you had. Okay, so I'm just going to fill in. Now, if any of you are watching this and you've taken my class in the studio, I'm doing a little bit different kind of techniques here. And that's mostly because I change up the way I do things quite often, because I like to experiment. So certainly if I've taught you something different in class and you want to continue with that, you can certainly do that. For this one, as you can see, my brushwork is a little bit different, because I'm just kind of trying something different here. Figure, why not, right? If we're going to do something different, this is certainly the time for it when we're all stuck inside. Why not give it a try? Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? Okay. It's a bit of a challenge for me too to talk while I'm painting, because normally I do not. Normally I'm very quiet. I have my music on. I like listening to Radiohead, Depeche Mode sometimes, depending on my mood. David Bowie, Guess Who, Burton Cummings, different things. I have pretty eclectic tastes, so what I like to listen to really varies. If you hear that pawing, that is my cat trying to get in the studio. I closed the door because I knew there was no way I was going to be able to record this without those guys interrupting. So here we are, working on the sky. A little bit more here. Set this down for a second. You can certainly tape this onto a board, your canvas, if you've got a small canvas like I do, and you find that it's flipping around. However you need to fasten it down. For me, I'm kind of used to having to hold on to it. I do a fair bit of plein air painting when we're allowed to go outside. And you get used to working in the wind and the different elements that are going on outdoors. So holding on to this is really not a big deal for me. And getting paint on my hands is even less of a deal. It happens a lot. Washes off with soap and water. You get paint on my face quite a bit too. Okay, let's look to that. Certainly, if you're not as far ahead in this video as what I am, you can definitely pause, work on your sky or whatever element you're working on, and then continue with the video. You can even stop the video altogether and come back to it if you need to take a break. That's kind of the beauty of doing the online video classes. I thought of doing the live class, but I thought, you know what, this is going to be a lot more useful for you, the students, because you can work on it a little bit and then come back to it, because we all have busy lives and sometimes we don't have a whole hour or 2 hours to sit down and work on something. Okay. Okay. It's not too bad. What I'm actually going to do, what I like to do for blending my sky a little bit. I'm sure if you've ever watched Bob Ross, you've seen him take bigger brushes and kind of blend things together. That's sort of what I'm doing with this. This is just a fan brush. They are a little bit more expensive than your regular brushes, but they do come in handy for a lot of different things that you do. Especially when you're oil painting. I'm not as familiar with the acrylics. It's not something that I use a lot. I'm considering using it. I'm sort of trying out some different things, obviously, while we're all stuck at home, so it might be something I try later on. Okay, so we're going to leave the sky for now, because a lot of that's going to get covered up with our branches. Let's grab a fresh brush, and we're going to work down. The next bit we want to work on is our background green. The trees on the other side of the lake. Add this and some of this in here. And you want it again to be, it's green, but you want it to be a light green because it is in the distance. So as you can see on my brush, I've got not a solid color. It's various mixes of green and white. And I know I put on your list sap green. I'm not actually using sap green. This is just a green that I had on my palette that I made up from using blue and yellow. So if you don't want to buy sap green, you can definitely just go ahead and mix up your own green. Okay. Let's do on this side too. Great. Okay, so then the next is your water. And I'm actually going to use a different glue for the water. You can use the same glue or a different glue. And we'll mix in. Again, same idea. The water that's further away is lighter in color. And the water that is closer is darker in color. And then water, I tend to try and keep my brush strokes going horizontal from side to side, just because it gives you a better illusion of it being actual water. Of course, if you had a super wavy day and you were trying to show the choppiness of the water, you can definitely change up your brush strokes. But I like to be consistent and show it a horizontal. keeping lighter areas and dark areas in your water will give you the illusion of waves. The deeper water and the crests of the wave coming through. This here is my rock, so that's why I'm not going across. If you've got just the little rocks, like what you've got shown in your reference, you can certainly cover that up all the way down, because your little rocks are just going to be in this little areas here. Okay. Bring it across. What? I'm going to need to grab some weight maybe. We'll see how this goes. There we go. I'm going to be doing a series of these over the next few months. And I might even just continue them, even though once they start lifting the orders for us to stay inside, I still might continue putting these up, because I think they do have value, like I said, for people that just can't get out and still want to learn how to do things on their own time. I think having this tool is good. There we go. There's some water. Okay. So I think what we're going to work on next, and this varies, that's why sometimes I pause, because it really depends on the composition, what you work on from one change to the next. And I think what makes sense in this instance is to go back and work on our tree. And we want to put more sun on this side, so I just grabbed a little bit of yellow just to brighten up. Switch out to a slightly smaller brush. Brighten up this side here. Put some sun here. And I don't paint high realism style. It's never really been my goal. Some people really enjoy doing that. Mine is more of an interpretive style. It is realism. I mean, it does look like water and sky and a tree. It's just I'm not looking for the photographic finish that some styles might be going for. Okay, I'm going to leave that right now, because again, a lot of that's going to get covered up. Let's go back. What we need now is to put our branches back in. And I'm going to use, now you can use, I'm going to show you something. A lot of people think that in order to do tiny lines, you have to get a brush like this. You don't have to get a brush like this. I mean, these tiny little brushes are obviously good for the tiny lines, but a brush like this with a nice cut edge does just as well, if not better. And I'm going to show you what I mean. You need your paint to be a little bit thinner for the smaller lines, especially if you're using oil, because a thicker oil paint obviously is going to give you a thicker line. Okay, and now this brush is fairly new as well, which is going to make a difference. It's going to give me a better line. So let's start down here where we had our branches, and we'll go through. And you can see just by, okay, we might have lost some of the video there. So I'm working on my grass. I'm putting in some of the dark areas. And go back in and add more light areas. There's a little bit dark here because the branch is going to go over top, and so it'll be in shade where the branches are over top. Okay, and we've got some grass. Let's do the rock. For the rock I use the burnt umber and white because burnt umber and white together give you a warm gray. I think I've got some green on this brush, so my rock is slightly gray-green, which is not a big deal because I've seen gray-green rocks. Okay, top of my rock is a little bit lighter. And as we go down, it's going to be darker because this part's in shadow. Because the sun is coming from that way, right? So. Right. Just checking to make sure that we're still recording here. Okay. There's the front of my rock and the back of my rock. Good. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's take what I call in class the magic tree brush. Everyone can see that. Let's mix up some green. And we'll go right in and do our tree. Put the branches in of the jack pine. Over back here is a little bit darker. I'm just using the edge of that brush to get the branches in. Front area where the sun is a little bit lighter. So we'll do a lighter green because that's where the sun is. Right at the tip here, we'll put a little bit of yellow. And it's interesting, I always wondered why this tree, the picture of it, shows yellow and orange and kind of a reddish. And it's actually because the seed pods, the pine cones on the jack pine have that color. And I didn't know that before until I looked it up today, so that's pretty cool. So I learned something today. Okay, here we go. This is going to fall, so I'm going to move it down. Good catch. Almost ended up on the ground. Branches. Do some up here. A little bit. Like I said, this you've got your reference photo, but you don't have to follow it exactly. You can put in as much or as little as you would like. So this is the finished artwork. I really hope you enjoyed the instruction today. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to send me an email or drop me a note here on the video. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.